If you're familiar with data modeling, you know that one of the best practices is to set up one-to-many type of relationships. Now, sometimes you need to go from the many side to the one side. There are different ways you can do this. Each method has its own type of impact on your analysis. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this in Excel, but the same concept applies to Power BI as well. Let's go to the data model so we can take a look at the structure of our data set. I'm going to switch to diagram view. Okay, so I have my sales table. This is where I collect the transaction number, the date the sales was made, customer number, product number, quantity, and sales price. On the master data side, I have a customer master data. The connection between these is the customer number. In the customer master data, I have more information about the customer, like their first name, last name, city, state, region, and country. Then on the product side, I have more information about the product. The connection between the two is the product number. And then I have a separate calendar table, and the connection between the two is the date. Now, what I want to find out is how many different cities am I selling to each month? So I want to get a distinct list of customer cities by month, something that looks like this. Now let's think this through. We have a one-to-many relationship here. This means that any filters we have on the calendar table is going to filter down our sales table. So if I am only looking at a special month, so let's say January, my sales table is going to be filtered down to January. But I only have information about customer number here. And I don't want to get a distinct list for the different number of customers I have. I want to get a distinct list for the different cities I sell to. That information is in the customer master data. This means that I have to go from my filtered list here back to my customer master data. I need to go the opposite way of the relationship. How do I do that? Well, my first attempt is to ignore the fact that I have these relationships in place and just go ahead and create my report where I have the month and year combination on the one side and distinct count of city. And then let's see what we get. Let's go ahead and insert a pivot table from the data model. I'll just insert it right here. I want to get the month and year combination on the rows and city in the values. So when I grab city, drop it in values, I automatically get a count of city. I want to get a distinct count. So let's go to value field settings and change that to distinct count. Immediately, we see that we have some problems here. Problem number one, relationships between tables may be needed. That's true because there is no relationship between those two tables. There's a relationship between calendar and sales. There's a relationship between customer master data and sales, but there isn't a relationship between the calendar and the customer master data. That's why we have problem number two, where we have the same number in each of these fields here. These filters aren't working. All we get is a distinct count of city from our customer master data. There is no information about how many different cities we sold to. Now, this kind of makes sense because we haven't involved the sales table in our analysis. We need sales to define the filter. How can we do that? Well, we can do it through a measure. So let's go ahead and create a new measure. I'm going to keep that measure in the sales table and call this distinct count of sales city. The formula is going to use calculate because calculate is the function that can alter our filter context. The expression is the distinct count of our city from the customer master data. And we are going to alter this based on the filter. And that filter is our entire sales table. That's where it comes into play. Close bracket, let's check the formula, and let's add this to our model. And now we get the correct distinct count of sales cities. So I'm going to kick out that implicit measure that we created before, and we get the correct values here. So all we had to do was add our entire table as a filter. Now, how does this work? Well, I'm going to attempt to explain it to you down here on a separate pivot table. Just going to copy the original, paste it here, and let's start from the beginning. So this is our starting point. We have the month and year combination here in the rows. when we get a distinct count of city directly from the customer master data, I'm going to drag city down here, we get a count of 12. This is basically what was happening before. So I dropped city in here. Let's actually switch this and view it in tabular form so we can see it beside one another. So notice the count of these, basically the distinct count for city, is 12, right? For each of these. There is no relationship between the two, and that was the result that we got before. Now, when we involve the sales table, this got updated automatically. So let's involve the sales table here as well. I'm going to go to sales and grab one of the fields here that can be aggregated. So for example, quantity. I'm just going to drag that and drop it in the values. So I'm only using this as a placeholder to show you what's happening in the background. The moment one of these fields comes into play, notice what happens to the other two. They are automatically filtered. How many different cities do I have here? 4. That's the number I see there. I have 3 here. That's the 3 I see there. 10, and that's the 10 that I have for March. In total, I have 11 different cities. So if I kick out the month and year combination from here, I end up with 11 different cities. That's how the sales table is acting as a filter in the background. You can use this trick whenever you want to go from the many side to the one side. Now, there are different approaches to this. So you could, for example, go to your data model and add a new column to your sales table and bring over the city and then do a direct distinct count on the city here because it's already in the sales table. So if I switch to data view, jump to sales, I could do that by using the related function, right? So I can take advantage of the relationship that is in place and grab the city from the customer master data. And then let's just call this sales city. Now I can go over to Excel. Let's go to our first pivot table here and bring over the sales city. By default here, I have the count of sales cities. So let's just double click and change this to distinct count, and we should see the same values here, right? So you can expand your data model, but it's going to come at a cost if you have a lot of data. Another option you have if you want to solve this with a measure is to use the cross-filter function. So cross-filter is a calculate modifier. It allows you to change the direction of the filter by a formula, right? So through a measure. Let me show you how it works. Let's go and add a new measure. I'll call it distinct sales city cross-filter. We're going to start with the calculate function, grab the distinct count of city from the customer master data. Now we are going to use the cross-filter function to change the filter direction. Here we have to specify the column names that are connecting our two tables. So one of them is the customer number from the sales table, and the other one is the customer number from the master data table. Now I am going to change the filter direction to both so that we can go both ways. This way we can also go from sales to customer. Now let's close the bracket, check the formula, and add this. Now you are going to see one difference between this and the other ways that we solved this before. And that's when it comes to the grand total. So for these, it works fine because sales passes over the filter to the customer master data, and these are filtered correctly. But when we don't have a filter on the sales table, we get the distinct list of cities from the customer master data. And we have an additional city in the master data that we don't have in sales. So here we don't get the correct value. Okay, so there are different ways you can solve this. You just have to understand the implications of each of the different methods. And based on the type of analysis that you want to make, pick the one that best fits that. Okay, so this was a bit of an advanced dive into the DAX world. So I hope you found it useful or at least interesting. Do give it a thumbs up if you did. And if you'd like to go from basic to pro with data modeling, Power Pivot, and DAX, make sure you check out my complete course on excelplus.com. Link to it is below the video. Many thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're unsubscribed, and I'm going to see you in the next video.